Okay, we are going to take a very important topic, that is US Fed rate hike. United States government, federal bank, Fed rate means the rate of the Federal Bank of United States of America. ठीक है, तो फेडरल बैंक मीन जैसे इंडिया में रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया है, वहां पे यूएस में यूएस फेडरल बैंक. ओके, तो व्हाई इज इट इन न्यूज? बिकॉज Fed hikes its benchmark interest rates by 0.75 percentage points, the biggest increase since 1994. 1994 के बाद से जो हाईएस्ट इंक्रीज ऑफ इंटरेस्ट रेट हुआ है अभी यूएस में हुआ है, एंड इस बेंचमार्क इंटरेस्ट रेट हैज बीन रेज्ड बाय 0.75 परसेंटेज पॉइंट्स. ठीक है, तो 0.75 परसेंटेज पॉइंट यानी ऑफ कोर्स पॉइंट्स जो भी रेपो रेट था या वहां का जो बेंचमार्क इंटरेस्ट रेट बेसिकली रेपो रेट ही होता है. तो दैट हैज बीन रेज्ड बाय 0.75 परसेंट पॉइंट अकॉर्डिंग टू द डॉट प्लॉट. ओके, this is not important. What is important is कि by the end of the year, the repo rate or the benchmark interest rate in US will be around 3.4% higher than the 1.5% that was in the March this year. That means in March it was around 1.5% repo rate. Okay, but now it is expected to go beyond 3.4% by the end of this year. Again, officials also significantly cut their outlook for. Now, United States government officials have also cut their projected GDP growth rate. Okay, so they are now aiming for only 1.7% as compared to 2.8% from March 2022. Okay? That means they have, first of all, they have increased the interest rates. Secondly, they have cut down the expected GDP growth projections. ठीक है, तो we are going to look into a lot of very important topics. ठीक है, कि what are the benchmark interest rates, how these benchmark interest rates vary and why are they varying a lot, why has the US Fed made this decision to cut down the interest rates. Okay, so this shows that why rate hike. The consumer price index, now this is again news clipping, I believe it is from 10th June. ठीक है, 10th June को there was a news that inflation has risen to 8.6% in May, highest since 1981. In May 2021, inflation in USA was around 8.6%, which was highest in the last 40 years from 1981. This was news on 10th of the June 2022. As we all know, there is a constant conflict going on between Russia and Ukraine, due to which the commodity prices in the world are rising. Like Ukraine supplies a great amount of wheat to the world. That is stuck inside Ukraine. It is not being evacuated, due to which the cost of wheat is rising. Right. Secondly, Russia supplies a lot of fuel to Europe. Now that fuel is not being being supplied, but yes, logistical issues are there, and a lot of Russian fuel is not coming into the market, due to which the fuel prices are also rising. That shows that fuel and food prices are rising throughout the world. Fuel and food prices are rising throughout the world. ठीक है, a price rise is not always bad. ठीक है, तो but this kind of price rise that we are seeing right now, this is not natural. This is induced due to war and other logistical issues. Okay, and that is why it is not natural and it needs to be countered. So we all know how inflation is controlled. We'll be taking a brief detour how inflation is controlled, right? So the news is that United States federal government, federal bank, has reduced the benchmark interest rates. Why they have done this at the first hand, right? We need to understand why have they done this at the first hand. Now, 8.6% inflation. Okay, and rate of inflation is around 8.6%. Okay, inflation is around 8.6%. This is US Fed, United States Federal Bank. Now if US Fed has to decrease this inflation, inflation कितना है 8.6%. This shows the general rise in the price of the goods. Okay, तो अगर इन्फ्लेशन को काउंटर करना है तो इजीएस्ट वे एक बैंक कौन सा यूज करता है, दैट इज डिक्रीजिंग, सॉरी, ओके, ठीक है, फाइन. तो what is basically inflation? Inflation means one scenario, a lot of money chasing very few goods. ठीक है, lot of money is chasing very few goods. That means when demand exceeds supply, we can say that there is a situation where inflation is present. Why? Because people are not able to supply the demanded goods. Then what will they do? More number of people will try to purchase the limited number of goods that are available, and then the market becomes competitive, the price rises. Okay. So when a lot of money is chasing smaller number of goods, that means demand exceeds supply. Okay, in that case what happens? Inflation happens. Now if we look at, okay, now if we look at the second clause, if we look at the second point, when there is excess of money in the market, what happens? When there is excess of money in the market, again money supply, when money supply increases, okay, if everyone is having a lot of money, then of course the value of money falls, because everyone is having $1,000 bill, yeah, everyone is having 10,000 rupees in their pocket, so the value of that 10,000 rupees will decrease. That means if the supply of money in the economy, okay, economy increases, so what happens? Inflation, yeah, price rise happens. Okay, so what US Fed can do? The US Fed or any central bank, what they do is they try to regulate the supply of money in the economy. How do they do it? What they do is, okay, now US Fed, there are other banks as well, okay, retail banks, okay, this is central bank, or you can consider it as RBI, okay, this is SBI, PNB and other banks. So of course companies do not take loan from US Fed, they of course take loan from other retail banks, right? But what happens? United States federal government sees that, United States Fed, yeah, RBI sees that the inflation is rising. That means US Fed says that the money supply in the market is increasing. We need to curtail the money supply. Okay, we need to curtail the money supply. What they will do is they will increase the interest rate. Okay, what they will do? They will increase the interest rate that this bank, US Fed or RBI, charges this bank. Okay, they will increase the interest rate that the central bank or the federal bank charges the retail banks. Okay, so for example, if the original interest rate was 1.5%, that means if SBI had to take loan from RBI, so they will have to pay an interest of 1.5%. ठीक है. तो now what will they will increase this by 1% for example. तो now plus 1% is equal to कितना हो जाएगा 2.5%. that means that means the cost of raising a loan for SBI has now increased from 1.5% to 2.5%. Understood? The cost of raising a loan for SBI has increased by 1% from 1.5% to 2.5%. Understood? Now SBI अपना घाटा तो करेगा नहीं. What they will do? What will they do? They will similarly increase the rate of interest that they charge their own customers. Okay, they will increase the rate of interest that they charge their own customers. For example, there's a company called KFC. If KFC wants to take loan, the interest on that loan will be higher. What effect does this do? What is the effect of this increase of interest rate in the economy? One simple effect that can be said is that now KFC will either try to limit its loan because the cost of borrowing has become high, and it will wait for a period जहां पे SBI अपने इंटरेस्ट रेट्स को दोबारा लो कर ले. ठीक है, पहला तो ये करेगा. Secondly, it will defer its all investments. Capital expansion या expansion of business को KFC रोक देगा अभी, and it will say कि okay, I will look for a more favorable time. When there will be a more favorable time, I will be expanding my business. अभी तो I will stop. उससे क्या होगा? उससे ये होगा कि now KFC, ठीक है, what happens? Since this has increased, the rate of interest that SBI is going to charge KFC has increased. That will lead to an increase in the cost for KFC. Okay, cost for KFC will increase. Okay, yeah, what KFC will do? KFC will be not increasing the wages now because it has a limited amount of money now, and the cost of raising capital has increased, right? What happens is an increase in interest rate actually depresses wages. Depresses wages, ठीक है. Second point, it also erodes away what? A part of disposable income. Okay, it also erodes away a part of disposable income. कैसे? For example, there was Mr. X, ठीक है, who has taken a loan. Now, the rate of interest has increased. Okay, Mr. X will have to pay back his loans. His wages have depressed. His wages are not increasing, but everything is getting costlier. Okay, in that case, the amount of money he can spend on items like buying a pizza or a burger and such expenses, he will be trying to limit them, because a higher interest rate shows depressed wages. Okay, and of course erodes away a part of disposable income, due to which Mr. X will try to limit his expenses. Okay, now when Mr. X, Mr. KFC and all these entities in the economy are trying to limit their expenses, what happens? What happens is the flow of money gets shrinks. The flow of money shrinks. Now, when the flow of money shrinks, that means people are not expending. Okay, that is, money is not moving faster now. The money is not exchanging hands faster. Rather, people are saving, for example. Okay, in that case, what happens is, if people are saving, so of course the flow of money gets shrunk, and again gradually inflation settles to a lower value. ठीक है? I hope you understood this. ठीक है? Now there was one important term, there was one very important term, 2-3 important terms that I would like to discuss here. The first one is liquidity trap. Okay, liquidity trap. These are very important from prelims point of view. quantitative easing, okay, quantitative easing, okay. These are all related to the current news that we are discussing, that United States Fed has decreased or increased the interest rates, ठीक है. Or the third is taper tantrums. Okay. Taper tantrums was recently in news as the Finance Minister of India said that we are now better prepared for the taper tantrums. Actually, taper tantrums happened in 2013. We'll be looking at it how. Okay. First of all, we will see what is quantitative easing. Okay. Before discussing quantitative easing or liquidity trap or taper tantrum, these three are very important terms for prelims. Believe me, these three are they all have at least they all have appeared in prelims exam at least once. Okay, at least when I say at least, that means they have appeared more than once. Okay, in some form or other. Now let's see what is quantitative easing. First of all, let's see what is quantitative easing. Okay, quantitative easing. Now, the news is that Fed has, the news is that we are discussing is that Fed has increased the interest rates by 0.75 percentage points. ठीक है, by 0.75 percentage points. ठीक है. So quantitative easing is opposite of interest rate increase. Quantitative easing is actually opposite of interest rate increase. So this is the news that we are discussing. Okay. Now what is quantitative easing? Okay, एक basic knowledge वाली चीज जो है कि if we make a comparison between USA and India, if we make a comparison between the India and USA, the interest rates of India and USA, तो US में interest rate is around 1.5%. Okay, India में it is around 4 to 6% or maybe higher. So why is this difference? Why is this difference? We need to understand first of all we need to understand why is the interest rate in USA perpetually low, whereas interest rate in India is around 4 to 6%. That is quite high. Understood? So we'll try to understand that as to why this is the case. For that, we need to understand what is interest rate. What is interest rate? Okay. Interest rate. Now, in the very simplest of the terms, interest rate is basically the cost of raising a loan. Yeah, interest rate can also be said as the valuation of the risk associated with a loan. Right? कैसे? There are two people, X and Y. Okay? X and Y. X says that I need rupees 1000. I need rupees 1000 from Y. So Y will say, okay, I will give you rupees 1000, but I will charge you a specific rate of interest that you will be paying me per month or per annum or per half yearly, and at the end of the period that we have decided कि भाई मुझे I need 1000 rupees. X says that I need a loan of rupees 1000 for 1 year. ठीक है. तो Y says that ठीक है, I will give you 1000 rupees, but since you are taking my 1000 rupees away, which I could have invested in something else and I could have earned money out of it, you are the one who are going to pay me a certain amount of monthly, for example, or half yearly, for example, interest rate on that. Okay, and that rate of interest will also depend upon the credit worthiness of Mr. X. Now, what is credit worthiness? Credit worthiness means कि what is the amount of risk associated with giving rupees 1000 to Mr. X. Y will make an analysis as to what is the risk associated, how much is the risk associated. If the risk is very high, so he will charge a very high interest rate. That high interest rate will either deter Mr. X from taking loan or if he takes, then he will be paying a higher rate of interest to Y. Okay, that is called credit worthiness. Okay, now that interest that is being charged by Mr. Y on rupees 10,000, for example 10%, okay, 10% is the interest charge. That means if we say per month, so X will take 1,000 rupees on 1st of January, and he'll have to return this 1,000 rupees on next 1st January, and in the meanwhile for every 12 months for example he will have to pay 10%. Okay, so that is interest rate. Now let's come back to USA and India. USA में the interest rate is around 1.5%. USA में interest rate is around 1.5%. That means the credit worthiness of US citizen, or the credit worthiness within the US government is very high as compared to the 4 to 6% in Indian scenario. Okay, understood. मतलब अगर इंडियन बैंक आपको कोई लोन दे रहा है तो they are charging 4 to 6%. That means Indian banks are having lesser trust on its own customers. Okay, whereas in USA the banks are charging 1.5%. Okay, that means the credit worthiness of US citizens is higher. एक तो ये aspect हो गया, ठीक है. दूसरा aspect इसका ये हो सकता है, if we look at the bond market, for example, if we look at the bond market, तो this rate is similar to the T-bills या treasury bonds अगर हम उसकी बात करें तो T-bills are what? Government securities. अगर गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज पे 1.5% इंटरेस्ट रेट यूएस में लग रहा है और गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज पे 6% इंटरेस्ट रेट इंडिया में लग रहा है, दैट मींस अगर आप गवर्नमेंट की सिक्योरिटी परचेज करते हो यूएस में, ठीक है, तो आपको बस 1.5% इंटरेस्ट ही मिलेगा. बट अगर आप गवर्नमेंट की सिक्योरिटी परचेज करते हो इंडिया में तो आपको मिलेगा 6% इंटरेस्ट. दैट मींस द क्रेडिट वर्दीनेस ऑफ यूएस गवर्नमेंट कह रही है भाई हमसे मत लो, हम आपको 1.5% से ज्यादा नहीं दे पाएंगे, लेकिन इंडियन गवर्नमेंट कह रही प्लीज आप हमसे लीजिए, हम आपको 6% दे रहे हैं, राइट. दैट मींस इंडियन गवर्नमेंट, द क्रेडिट वर्दीनेस ऑफ इंडियन गवर्नमेंट इज लेसर एज कंपेयर टू द क्रेडिट वर्दीनेस ऑफ यूएस गवर्नमेंट. ओके, अंडरस्टूड. तो ये रिफ्लेक्ट करता है इंटरेस्ट रेट का, लाइक इंटरेस्ट रेट इज अ रिफ्लेक्शन ऑफ क्रेडिट वर्दीनेस आल्सो. ओके, आई होप यू अंडरस्टूड दिस. बैक टू क्वांटिटेटिव ईजिंग. ठीक है, बैक टू क्वांटिटेटिव ईजिंग. Now what is quantitative easing? As I said, US के अंदर, US में interest rate is 1.5%. US में 1.5%. तो during the time of COVID के टाइम पे सारी गवर्नमेंट्स ने expansionary monetary policy यूज की. Expansionary monetary policy means easy monetary. Okay, easy monetary policy. There are two kind of monetary policies. The first one is easy monetary policy and the second one is tight monetary policy. Okay, तो अब हम देखेंगे कि इनका यूज कब गवर्नमेंट्स करते हैं, राइट. बैंक्स कब यूज करते हैं? जब इकोनॉमी में डिमांड जो है, डिमांड लो है. In that case, the aim of the bank is to increase the demand in the economy, right? अगर डिमांड लो है तो बैंक क्या करना चाहेगा? It will try to increase the demand. How it can increase the demand? What if it decreases the interest charged on the loans? Now, if RBI decreases the interest charged that it charges to SBI, so what will SBI do? SBI will also decrease the interest that it charges to the customers. That means taking loan for the customer becomes easy. That means the companies will now take huge amount of loans and start expanding their business. When they will start expanding, they will start hiring people. In that case, wages will increase. More number of wage people will try to purchase more number of things, and thus expansion of basically expansion takes place, ठीक है, and that is called easy monetary policy. That is called easy monetary policy. तो ड्यूरिंग द कोविड के टाइम, राइट, कोविड के टाइम there was a lot of news that all the governments are taking what kind of measures? Liquidity, ठीक है, liquidity increase measures. That means governments are the banks are making sure that liquidity in the market is maintained. The liquidity in the market is maintained. Liquidity means availability of funds. Availability of funds for what? For people to invest, for corporates to take loans. Okay. So we can say that during the period of COVID, banks throughout the world used easy monetary policy. Banks throughout the world used easy monetary policy. Understood? Now there comes a time, ठीक है, now there comes a time, अगर आपका 1.5% इंटरेस्ट रेट पहले ही है, ठीक है, आपने इसको डिक्रीज कर दिया. if you look back, ठीक है, if you look at this chart, ठीक है, तो दिसंबर 2017 में it was 0.25. Up to September 2018, the interest rate was, federal fund was, the Fed's effective changes to federal rate interest rate was 0.25% increase. Okay, but in December 2018, ठीक है, it was cut by 0.25%. फिर August 2019 also it was cut by 0.25%. Okay, and फिर October and March and around this period, March 2020, it was cut by 100 basis points. It was cut by 100 basis points does not mean that interest rate becomes zero. It does not mean. It means that whatever interest rate was at that point in time, it was reduced by 1 percentage point. 1 percentage point. ठीक है? Basis point means 0 to 100. और अगर basis point को percentage में करना है तो उसको by 100 से divide करके 100 से multiply कर दो. That will come 1 percentage point से कम हो गया. तो we can see that this part, we can clearly see that US government was pursuing easy monetary policy. ठीक है? The government was pursuing easy monetary policy during this time, right? During the COVID time, to maintain liquidity, US government was maintaining what? Easy monetary policy. Now we'll look as to how it has affected. Okay, back to quantitative easing. Okay, I hope you understood कि इजी मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी कब फॉलो की जाती है. लेकिन अगर किसी कंट्री का, फॉर एग्जांपल यूएसए, अगेन यूएसए में ऑलरेडी इंटरेस्ट रेट 1.5%, ठीक है, इसको डिक्रीज कर दिया 0.25 बेसिस पॉइंट से तो हो गया 1.25%, फिर इसको कर दिया 0.25 से तो हो गया 1%, राइट, 1.00%. तो इन दैट केस the room available to the central bank to decrease the rate further, ठीक है, many European countries are having negative interest rates actually. Okay, so in this case the available room for US government, the interest rates are already very low. Okay, and if the US government tries to bring them further down, to the amount of the kind of effect that it will have is not very prominent as compared to consider a country like India. Consider a country like India जहाँ पे 5% इंटरेस्ट रेट था लोन पे, फिर इन्होंने 4% कर दिया, फिर इन्होंने 3% कर दिया. तो 5% से 3% का जो चेंज होगा वो 1.5% से 1% चेंज से ज्यादा है, राइट? बिकॉज हियर पहले बहुत हाई इंटरेस्ट रेट था और अब अचानक ही बहुत लो हो जाएगा, तो पीपल विल actually use this method. Okay, and this is how, in this case, monetary policy transmission will happen. ठीक है, that means if the RBI, if the central bank is trying to reduce the interest rate to stimulate the economy will actually be stimulated. But in this case, where interest rates are already low, the interest rates are already low, what if it becomes zero, है ना? तो zero के बाद तो आप reduce नहीं कर पाओगे, and then you go into liquidity, trap. That means you cannot further boost the liquidity by decreasing the rate of interest. But here you have still a lot of space available to increase the liquidity by decreasing the rate of interest. Understood? Now I hope you understood as to how liquidity functions how liquidity functions according to the rate of interest. अगर rate of interest high है तो liquidity will decrease, because higher rate of interest shows higher cost of borrowing or higher cost of taking a loan, and in that case what happens is the companies and the corporates and people are not going to take loans and expand themselves or expand the businesses. Okay, that will lead to a fall in wages and then demand also. But if we look at this point, if we look at a point where interest rate is already zero, it is already so low that the bank cannot reduce it further. In that case, the interest rate is zero. People are not, the interest rate is zero. That means the loans are almost free. And still people are not taking loans from the government, because people are actually scared about the future. Because they are saying interest rate is zero, आगे क्या होगा, we are not sure, right? We are not sure. ये भी हो सकता है कि अगर interest rate already zero है तो people will believe that the interest rate is only going to rise further. The interest rate is only going to rise in future, right? तो अभी अगर ये बोरोइंग कर लेते हैं किसी, ठीक है, अभी अगर बोरोइंग कर लेते हैं तो अभी तो जीरो इंटरेस्ट रेट पे बोरो करेंगे, लेकिन आफ्टर पॉइंट इन टाइम दे विल हैव टू पे अ हायर इंटरेस्ट रेट. Okay, and that is the situation called liquidity trap, when people are not, despite the fact that interest rates are very low or even zero, people are not taking loans. That is called liquidity trap. Okay, so I hope you understood what is liquidity trap. So to counter this liquidity trap, US Fed and many other governments used quantitative easing. Quantitative easing is a kind of liquidity boosting measure by a different technique. In this method, the Federal Bank or RBI, ठीक है, what they do is they print new money. ठीक है, they print money. Okay, and then they start purchasing, ठीक है, for example SBI है ना, या और किसी के पास टी बिल्स हैं, ठीक है, गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज हैं. What they do is they print new money and they start purchasing these T-bills and government securities from people who are holding it. They start purchasing this T-bill or government securities from the people who are holding it. In that case, money will be sent to these people. That means money supply in the market again increases. This is called quantitative easing. This is called quantitative easing. That means quantitative easing is a special monetary tool that is used when a country is mostly pushed into liquidity trap. Okay, or when in situations where liquidity is not low due to low demand, it is due to certain specific criteria like COVID and all. Okay, the Fed used a lot of quantitative easing during the coronavirus affected period time. ठीक है, okay, so this is called quantitative easing. Okay, ठीक है. Why the rate hike? I hope you now you have understood what is quantitative easing, what is liquidity trap, and why has the Federal Reserve raised the rate of interest. Why has the Federal Reserve raised the rate of interest? The consumer price index rose to 8.6%, and the core inflation means, core inflation is very important. Core inflation means the inflation excluding food and energy. Okay? Excluding food and energy. Now CPI means consumer price index. It is a basket. It is an index which traces the rise in the goods, the rise in the price of the goods and services in a specific basket. Okay, basket. So core inflation was around 6%. Okay? Surging food, gas and energy prices all contributed to the gain, with fuel oil by 106.7% over the past year. Okay, the fuel prices have almost doubled. Okay, the rise in inflation meant workers lost more ground in May, with real wages declining. Okay, real wages have also declined. Now what is real wages and nominal wages? Okay, so inflation, what inflation does is inflation erodes a part of the wage. Kaise? For example, there is 3% inflation. Okay, there is 3% inflation. 3% inflation means the value of 1 rupee at this point in time, if we consider a reference point, for example 2010, okay? If we consider 2010 as reference, so we will assume 0% inflation here, okay? And if we say and if we say that in 2020 the inflation was around 10% as compared to 2010, ठीक है, as compared to 2010, that means what was the value of rupees 100 at this point has now decreased by 10%, is only rupees 90. Understood? That means the value of rupee has decreased by a certain percentage, that is 10%. That means ki the amount of goods, the amount of goods that we were able to buy in rupees 100, okay, that amount of good that we, मतलब ये हुआ कि if we had rupees 100 at that point in time, अगर हमारे पास उस वक्त 100 रुपीज की परचेजिंग पावर थी, तो आज हमारे पास कितने रुपीज की परचेजिंग पावर है? बस वो जो 100 रुपीज है वो 90 रुपीज में कन्वर्ट हो गया है, राइट? मतलब कि सिंस हमारी पॉकेट में जो पैसा था वो तो कम हुआ नहीं, राइट? वी हैव अ $100 नोट इन आवर पॉकेट एंड इट इज 2010. वी कीप दैट जीन्स in our room, and then in 2020 we go and we see that the inflation with respect to 2010 is 10% in 2020, and you take that 100 rupees note out and you go to the market. So the amount of goods that you would be able to buy with rupees that rupees 100 will be same as you would be able to buy in 2010 of rupees 90. That means 90 rupees को बराबर कर दिया है रुपीज 100 के. It's a bit contradictory in the sense to understand, but yes, it is like inflation has eroded a percentage of your money. ठीक है? तो real wages are those wages which are adjusted for inflation. अगर inflation ना होता तो amount of wages that a person earns, how would have he be able to expend it, okay, and what would he be able to purchase from it? तो अगर इन्फ्लेशन है तो वो अमाउंट ऑफ जो लॉस होगा वेजेस का उसको कहते हैं रियल वेजेस, ठीक है? तो इन्फ्लेशन हैज लेड टू अ डिक्लाइन इन 0.6% फ्रॉम अप्रैल एंड 3% ऑन अ 12-month basis. That means in the last 12 months, for last 1 year, an erosion of 3% of income has taken place. That means अगर उस वक्त रुपीज 1000 कोई अर्न कर रहा था तो अब 1000 की बजाय कितना 970 रुपीज ही अर्न कर रहा है. 3% मीन्स 1000 का 1% कितना हो जाएगा 10 एंड 3% 30. तो 1000 रुपीज जो अर्न कर रहा था पर्सन, वो अभी आज के टाइम में कितना अर्न कर रहा है, 970 ही अर्न कर रहा है. दिस इज लॉस ऑफ रियल वेजेस. Okay, to counter all these things, what US Fed has done, US Fed has increased the what, increased the what, interest rate by 0.75 percentage point, and the interest rates have already been increasing. Now what is the impact of this interest rate increase on India? It is also very important to understand, because there has been multiple number of questions in UPSC prelims कि अगर यूएस ने फेड रेट इंक्रीज कर दिया तो इंडिया के स्टॉक एक्सचेंज पे और इन चीजों पे क्या फर्क पड़ेगा. तो लेट्स ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट इन अ बिट ऑफ डिटेल. ओके, नाउ अगेन यूएस फेड, ओके, और ये है इंडिया, ये है इंडिया, ठीक है. नाउ यूएस फेड में इंटरेस्ट रेट कितना है, 1.5%. यूएस फेड का इंटरेस्ट रेट 1.5%. इफ वी कंसिडर द सेम एज इंटरेस्ट रेट इन यूएसए, दैट मींस रेजिंग लोन, अगर हम यूएस में जाके कोई पर्सन लोन लेता है तो उसको कितना इंटरेस्ट पे करना होगा, 1.5% इंटरेस्ट पे करना होगा, राइट. अगर वही पर्सन, अगर इंडिया में कोई पर्सन लोन लेता है तो इंडिया में उसको 6% इंटरेस्ट रेट पे करना होगा. इट इज इवन हायर. वी आर टेकिंग अ हाइपोथेटिकल सिचुएशन. तो दिस इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन बोथ. तो व्हाट पीपल डू इज, the people who trade in currencies and market, who the foreign portfolio investors, for example FPIs, FDIs, ठीक है, what they do is they take cheaper loans in US, ठीक है, cheaper loans, okay, and they invest in the bond market. See what they do, यहां पे वो कस्टमर बनते हैं और यहां पे वो पर्सन बनते हैं जो दूसरों को लोन देते हैं. कैसे? यूएस में लोन रेज करने का कॉस्ट है 1.5%, ठीक है. अगर कोई पर्सन 1000 रुपीज का लोन लेता है तो उसको 15 रुपीज इस पे इंटरेस्ट देना पड़ेगा यूएस में, ठीक है. अंडरस्टूड? नाउ व्हाट ही डज इज ही टेक्स दिस 1000 रुपीज लोन एंड ब्रिंग्स दैट लोन टू इंडिया एंड ही स्टार्ट्स इन्वेस्टिंग इन बॉन्ड मार्केट या इक्विटी मार्केट या सिक्योरिटीज मार्केट में इन्वेस्ट करना स्टार्ट कर देता है. नाउ व्हाट इज अ बॉन्ड? What is a bond? Bond is a debt instrument. Bond is an instrument of debt. That means it's very important to understand कि bond कैसे function करता है, ठीक है. तो like this is National Stock Exchange, okay, और यहाँ पे bond मिलते हैं, ठीक है. आपने एक bond खरीदा जो कि इंटरेस्ट है 5%. What does this mean? What does the mean कि आपने बॉन्ड खरीदा? अगर फॉर एग्जाम्पल आपने टाटा पावर का बॉन्ड खरीदा, ओके, तो इसका मीनिंग क्या हुआ? इसका फिजिकल मीनिंग ये हुआ कि टाटा पावर को कैपिटल की जरूरत होगी. तो व्हाट टाटा पावर विल डू? टाटा पावर विल इशू अ बॉन्ड ऑफ रुपीज 10,000 of rupees 1000 for example, and they will say that we are going to pay 6% interest on this. We are going to pay 6% interest on this, ठीक है. We are going to pay 6% interest. That means ये एक पेपर अगर टाटा पावर का आप खरीद लोगे तो you will be the person who is loaning 10 rupees 1000 to Tata Power. You are the person who is giving loan to Tata Power. अगर आप बॉन्ड मार्केट में इन्वेस्ट करते हो तो आप बेसिकली क्या कर रहे हो? यू आर नॉट परचेजिंग इक्विटी, यू आर परचेजिंग अ बॉन्ड, बेसिकली अ लोन इंस्ट्रूमेंट. दैट मीन्स यू आर गिविंग लोन टू टाटा पावर. आप अपना मनी लेके आए, राइट, आप अपना मनी लेके आए, आपने रुपीज 1000 पे किया, ठीक है, आपने रुपीज 1000 पे किया, आपको बॉन्ड मिल गया, पैसे इनको मिल गए, इसके थ्रू इनको मिल गए, ठीक है. यानी टाटा पावर ने 1000 रुपीज ले लिया आपके और ये कहते हैं कि ये आपको 6% इंटरेस्ट भी देंगे, राइट, 6% इंटरेस्ट भी देंगे और एक साल बाद आपको 1000 रुपीज वापस भी मिल जाएगा. तो यू आर फंक्शनिंग एज अ बैंक, अ काइंड ऑफ बैंक, राइट. यू आर एक्सटेंडिंग लोन. तो what happens is all these people they bring money, cheaper money from USA, ठीक है. USA में इनको 4 पॉइंट, USA में इसको अब कोई पर्सन जो है ₹1000 दे ब्रॉट फ्रॉम यूएसए, वहां पे इनका इंटरेस्ट रेट 1.5%, तो 15 रुपीज दे विल हैव टू पे. यूएस में हर मंथ उनको 15 रुपीज देना होगा. नाउ व्हाट दे डू इज ये लेके आते हैं इंडियन बॉन्ड मार्केट में एंड दे अर्न 6% इंटरेस्ट ऑन दिस बॉन्ड. तो एक इंटरेस्ट रेट डिफरेंशियल हो गया 6% माइनस 1.5% इक्वल टू 4.5%. ये इनका इनकम हो गया, राइट. Like 45 rupees will be their earning per month. They are doing nothing. They are taking cheaper loans because interest rates are already low in USA. Interest rates are low in USA. So if they extend loans in USA, for example, अगर वो यूएस की किसी कंपनी को का बॉन्ड परचेज करेंगे तो वहां पे इंटरेस्ट रेट तो ऑलरेडी लो है, तो दे विल नॉट बी बेनिफिटिंग फ्रॉम इट. तो व्हाट दे डू इज दे टेक लोन्स इन यूएसए एंड दे गिव लोन्स टू कंपनीज इन इंडिया. Most of the foreign portfolio investors are doing this. Okay. तो अब क्या होगा? I hope you understood अभी तक. Now what happened? US Fed has increased the interest rate. That means पहले 1.5% था, अब हो गया 3% फॉर एग्जाम्पल. तो इंटरेस्ट रेट डिफरेंशियल दैट वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट, इंडिया में इंटरेस्ट रेट कितना था 6% और पहले 1.5% था यूएस में. तो इसका जो डिफरेंस होता था यही अर्निंग होती थी एफपीआईज की, फॉरेन पोर्टफोलियो इन्वेस्टर्स की. अब क्या हो गया 6% माइनस 3% इक्वल टू 3%. ठीक है, ओके. तो व्हाट विल दे डू, दे आर हैविंग अ लेसर इनकम नाउ. ठीक है, तो they will, instead of investing in India, they will take their money back from India and start investing in US itself, because US में ही अब 3% इंटरेस्ट मिल रहा है. तो why will they come to India and pay commission and everything, right? अब US की गवर्नमेंट में, US के विद इन ही they are trying to invest in bond market, जहां पे they will be getting an interest rate of at least 3%, right? अब तो why will they come to India? तो इसका इम्पैक्ट ये हुआ. What is the impact? The impact is when United States Federal Reserve raises its interest rate, for foreign money from India flows back to United States. ठीक है, foreign money from India flows back to United States. This is what happens when the United States increases its Federal Reserve interest rates. Okay, that is narrowing interest rate differential. Of course, पहले 6 और 1.45% का इंटरेस्ट रेट डिफरेंशियल 4.5% था, फिर 6 से 3% का इंटरेस्ट रेट डिफरेंशियल 3% हो गया. एंड देन दिस लीड्स टू हायर रिटर्न्स इन यूएसए एंड फ्लाइट ऑफ कैपिटल बैक टू इंडिया, बैक टू यूएसए. ओके, एंड another important point to note here is जब इंटरेस्ट रेट डिफरेंशियल हाई था, दैट मीन्स इंडिया में इंटरेस्ट रेट 6% और यूएस में इंटरेस्ट रेट 1.5%. ठीक है, अगेन लेट्स कंसिडर दैट सिनेरियो. 6% माइनस 1.5% is equal to 4.5%. This is called interest rate differential, the difference between the interest rates. Okay, इस वक्त क्या था कि सारे जो फॉरेन पोर्टफोलियो इन्वेस्टर्स थे, दे वर रशिंग टू इंडिया टू इन्वेस्ट इन इंडिया बिकॉज दे वर अर्निंग अ हायर इंटरेस्ट रेट इन इंडिया. ठीक है, ओके. तो व्हाट हैपेंड वाज इंडियन मनी की, सिंस दे वर ब्रिंगिंग डॉलर्स टू इंडिया, राइट, एंड दे वर परचेजिंग इंडियन रुपी, तो इंडियन रुपी की डिमांड बढ़ गई, राइट, और हमारे पास डॉलर्स भी ज्यादा हो गए क्योंकि दे ब्रॉट इन डॉलर्स, और इंडियन रुपी की डिमांड बढ़ी, तो एक्सचेंज रेट ओके, एक्सचेंज रेट क्या हो गया, इंप्रूव हो जाएगा, राइट, इंप्रूव हो जाएगा. दैट मीन्स द एप्रिसिएशन ऑफ रूपी विल टेक प्लेस. एप्रिसिएशन ऑफ रूपी will take place. Appreciation of rupee means the value of rupee vis-a-vis dollar will increase, because currency market is very simple, exchange rate is very simple. If the demand for rupee increases, तो the value of rupee increases. If the demand for dollar increases, the value of dollar increases, right? तो सिमिलरली अगर बहुत जब हायर इंटरेस्ट रेट इंडिया में था और लोअर इंटरेस्ट रेट यूएस में था तो एप्रिसिएशन ऑफ रुपी, लेकिन अगर ये डिफरेंशियल कम हो गया, ये डिफरेंशियल कम हो गया 6% और 3% हो गया, राइट, तो ये कितना हो जाएगा 3%, राइट, इंटरेस्ट रेट डिफरेंशियल फॉल्स. Okay, interest rate differential falls. In that case the people are taking their money back. मतलब जो उन्होंने इन्वेस्ट किया इंडिया में, फॉर एग्जांपल 10,000 रुपीज, दे आर कन्वर्टिंग दैट मनी बैक इनटू डॉलर्स एंड टेकिंग बैक टू यूएसए. तो अब डॉलर की डिमांड बढ़ गई, राइट, तो इन दैट केस डेप्रिसिएशन ऑफ रुपी हैपेंस. डेप्रिसिएशन ऑफ रुपी हैपेंस. That means flight of capital leads to depreciation of rupee and incoming of capital leads to appreciation of rupee. So I hope you understood this very important, interesting topic. I believe it was interesting. If you have any queries and doubts, kindly reach me out in the comment section.